Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios, Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, well, we'll bring you some politics as our usual want tonight in two parts. First up tonight, we continue our election 2014 coverage of this year's gubernatorial race. Tonight, former high-ranking Obama administration official involved in the initial work on Obamacare, Donald Berwick joins us. He is, of course, a doctor as well, making his run for the Democratic nomination for governor. Then on the second half, we'll bring you a profile and courage from the Boston City Council. That's right, you heard right. She said what she meant, and she did what she said, in so many words. I'm talking, of course, about newly elected at-large City Councilor Michelle Wu. She joins us to talk about her first months in office and her very first vote as a Boston City Councilor. All that and more tonight on Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Tonight, a two-part show, but all politics, as is our usual want. First up tonight, we continue our election 2014 coverage of the gubernatorial race with yet another of the candidates running in the Democratic primary. Of course, this is caucus season, and all the candidates have been very busy going around to the various Democratic committees looking for those precious 15% of the vote that will allow them to move on to the primary ballot tonight. A man who's never sought major office before. Talk about baptism of fire. He's running for governor. He is, of course, a pediatrician as well, a former high-ranking Obama administration official involved in the rollout of the Affordable Health Care Act, now seeking to become the leader of Massachusetts. I'm talking, of course, about Donald Berwick. And Donald, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me
Thanks
here.
so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, let's see, where shall we start? Is this, I mean, I'm sure all your handlers told you, oh, Don, this is an enormous undertaking. Has it been more difficult, tougher than you thought, running a campaign? You've never run for office, of course. You've managed tons of people. You're an accomplished man, a physician by profession, and
It's more exciting than I would have thought. You know, I'm an experienced executive. I started a small nonprofit organization that grew to global size over 25 years, and so I was experienced with complexity. I ran the largest agency in federal government by budget, Medicare and Medicaid, $800 billion. So I'm pretty used to complex things, and a campaign is kind of like that. It's like setting up an organization and really making it thrive. We have a wonderful team. I've tried to give it the guidance it needs, but it's doing great. And then getting out there, Joe, and meeting the people, being in the living rooms and the libraries and the town committees, it's just so textured and interesting and inspiring. I think people they share values in common that really, really motivate me.
But, you know, I hope you don't take offense. I think many people would say you're an unknown or relative unknown, certainly not to people in the know, in certainly in the healthcare industry, but all those voters and them saying, Donald who? You have to put your ego in your pocket a little bit and you know, change how you approach.
It's the job, and it's really interesting to get out and meet people, and you know the slate is clean. You know, I'm there to present myself, explain what I believe and think, and listen to them. But remember, I'm in the pathway of Deval who and Elizabeth who, Elizabeth Warren and Deval Patrick. They both came from outside
helpful.
The political. Yeah, and this is a state that's shown such openness and receptivity to people who bring in experiences from outside the normal political ranks. In fact, I think that's the more customary history in this state for governors and other officials, and so I'm the embrace is there. Yeah, we got a job to do. I want to get my message out, and that's what a campaign is.
You know, and of course you've made your mark in many ways, as you said, as an executive, and certainly in your own chosen profession. Have you found, given all the controversy surrounding the Affordable Health Care Act, and you know, do you find that helps you? Or does it hurt you? I mean, this is a state that before Obamacare embraced universal health care, essentially, in a model of sorts, not the same, but in a model of sorts. And does it help, or does it? How does that play out?
Well, I think it helps. I mean, if you look at the big picture around the Affordable Care Act, this is a very important step for this country. This is the most important step toward health care as a human right this country has taken since really Medicare and Medicaid were started. And I think people really know that. There are people that want to shoot this law down. They're taking every chance they can get to kind of really deceive us about what this law means. But this law means that people all over this nation, 50 million people who wouldn't have had coverage, can, if the law is implemented successfully, will be able to sleep at night and not fear they're going to be bankrupt or not be able to get health care. The rollout problems are terrible. I mean, there was a really serious set of issues that came as the Obamacare began to roll out. During the period I was in Medicare and Medicaid, we implemented a lot of the early stages of the Affordable Care Act. We put millions of kids under their parents' policies up to age 26. We introduced prevention benefits. We put insurance companies under new restrictions about overhead rates and about transparency. It was great. But then,
No problems with your computer system.
no, not while I was there. I had to leave, though. You know, the Republicans blocked me.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck called me the second most dangerous man in America.
Wear that as a badge of honor, right?
I do. And I had to leave. They blocked my nomination. And then for 2 years after that, I couldn't even communicate back with the agency. It's illegal for a presidential appointee to do that. So I watched, like you did, this mess in the rollout. I think it's going to get fixed. It's so important what's going on. And the thing to keep in mind is the big picture here, which is healthcare is a human right. It should be made that way. This state did it 8 years ahead of the rest of the country, and that's the pathway we're on. I think it's going to work.
Governor Donald Berwick, what would have you done to avoid that, though? Because there's been problems here as well, and it was working, and granted, this is a little more complex than the system Mass initially had in place, but how would have you avoided that if you had been? And no criticism implied of Duvall per se, but
both this president and this governor, they're fantastic. We're very lucky to have them. Of course, I don't know the details because I couldn't, by law, participate in this. I don't know the details, but I think it's a management failure. I think we have here a need for an executive oversight and metrics and pacing the way this rolls out that really is secure and well managed. And for 30 years, that's what I've worked on. My field, actually, Joe, is improvement. I've worked on improving healthcare systems all over the world, eliminating infections in hospitals, making sure we're focused on prevention, putting the patient first. And that takes leadership, and the leadership has to have details in it. You have to actually monitor as you go along. And I don't know, but I think somewhere along the pathway here, somebody lost sight of the kind of step-by-step hard work of successful management. And in fact, that's one of the things that excites me about going to the corner office. I've spent 3 decades studying and teaching and practicing modern approaches to improvement in complex systems with great results, thanks to my colleagues.
You think Deval Patrick's done a good job?
I do. I worked with a lot of governors, and when I was in Washington, and I thought we have a very, very fine governor. He's done a lot for this state. We've got the most progressive energy policy in the nation. He has done a lot to get the healthcare law correctly implemented. He's been a person devoted to what I'm devoted to, which is compassion and social justice issues. So I credit him a lot.
Well, not everybody agrees with you.
Well, I don't agree with everything he's done.
No, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate here. Don't get me wrong, but
it's a tough job. And I'm against casinos. He's for casinos. I think casinos are a bad deal for this state, and I think that's a misjudgment. And frankly, I spent a lot of my career working on making healthcare better, and healthcare is a very important issue for this state. We've got to get it right. Healthcare costs are eating us alive, public and private sector, and we need somebody in that corner office that understands what better healthcare looks like, because when it's better, it's lower cost. And also, I'm favoring single-payer healthcare. That's not where this governor went, but I think we need a single-payer healthcare system.
For that matter.
No, they didn't go there, but I think we could. I think this state leads. We've got a history of it, and if we had single-payer in this state, costs would fall, experience would improve, things would be simpler for everybody, and I think we should go there.
When you were working, and I granted you weren't in the administration or appointed at that point, but the debate that went on in putting together Obamacare. Were you involved in that? And clearly, if you were recommending single payer, it wasn't adopted. A little disappointed in that, and disappointed in Obama for taking taking the current path.
Well, I wasn't there during the negotiations that went on in terms of who got what deal. You know, I assume the president made some judgments about how to get that law passed at a national level. But that's what makes me proud about Massachusetts. While that debate was going on, 2006, we had already solved it. We decided everybody gets health care in this state. That's something to be really, really proud of. That's what gives me confidence that on a really progressive agenda focused on social justice and human rights and equality and compassion in government, that this state can get things done. We seem to be able to get together, even though we disagree often. We can do some pretty interesting things here.
Well, you're up against some pretty well-funded, highly qualified candidates for the Democratic nomination. How are you doing in the caucuses, incidentally? You going to get to 15%?
Yeah,
you comfortable with that?
I am very comfortable. I think we're going to get 15% and do better than that. I think we've done it. I had a great field operation, a lot of receptivity to the progressive messages that I'm getting out there, and the caucuses were really fun. You ought to try it sometime. I mean, this is going all over the state, right into the grassroots, right, talking to the activists in the Democratic Party who really care a lot about this.
You got a good reception from them?
So
by and large, they're a pretty progressive group in general.
Yeah.
So
well, when I got in, I had that experience in Washington where you didn't talk about poverty that much. You didn't talk about injustice or inequities. That didn't poll well, I guess, nationally. So I didn't know how my message would be received. I think we should be a place that commits to the progressive agenda without apology, and talks about equality as a foundational issue for our nation, and we're getting more unequal, not less unequal. I think we have to think about people who are in trouble and help them out of trouble. I think we should be working hard on substance abuse. I think we should fix our correction system. I think our education system needs to be world-class for everybody, and I don't think that happens by beating up on teachers. It happens by helping teachers. That progressive message, I didn't know how it would play, but I'll tell you, I would say without every single town, every single living room I've been in, people are nodding, say, yep, I want a Commonwealth. I want a Massachusetts where equality and caring for each other are foundational. I want to apologize for that.
of course, and not to compare, but that's many of the things that Deval Patrick was saying 8 years ago. Of course, a little thing happened on the way, or after he got in the corner office, the economy went south, and so you don't always get what you want. And sometimes you don't even get what you need. Yeah. But
well, hopefully we got an economy on the mend now. It appears that way. But what I care about is that the benefits of that improving economy get to everybody. I think we are at a real serious risk of seeing disparities increase. That's why this minimum wage argument has got to be settled. We got to go there. I don't think we should be taking away unemployment benefits or sick time from people. I think we need to make sure that people at the lower end of the economy are able to grow and get into the economy. That's absolutely key, and that's a moral commitment.
Well, of course, as I mentioned, you've got 4 very worthy opponents in the Democratic primary, and who knows what awaits you in the general should you be successful. Are you daunted by that? You've got a couple of them that are one statewide office. No fear?
No. I mean, I welcome this. It's a chance. Look, I'm getting a chance at this part of my life to bring what I care really about to the people of Massachusetts and make the case. I'm not looking over my shoulder at the other candidates. I'm in a state that has welcomed people to come in from outside the political architecture, and the response has been great. And I just feel so privileged to be able to make these arguments here that about the kind of community we want to build and the values that underlie that community. That's absolutely key. And I think I can execute it. I think I can carry it out. I mean, my experience as an executive and my commitments to these kind of values, I think, are foundational for the kind of Commonwealth we all want.
And as do you think of yourself as a politician?
I don't.
I'm thinking of, and I'm not sure Steve Grossman or Martha Coakley do, but
I don't know. I mean, I'm learning. I'm learning. If politician means listening and trying to make a pattern out of what people think and believe, then yes, then I always have been one. When you're a doctor, what you do is you try to understand what the person who's come to you is bringing to you. What is their theory? What's their concern? What's the diagnosis? And what can we do together? And I guess it's kind of similar. The best part of politics for me is listening, and that's pretty familiar to me.
Well, you know, you haven't blinked so far. Here's your chance. What would you do with the Department of Children and Families? Would have you brought in a new manager, a new leader there? Some pretty serious charges.
Oh yeah, it is a mess. And I remember I've seen it from the other side. As a pediatrician, I fought every day for the well-being of my children. A lot of whom were in Medicaid and very stressed families. So I know what it's like to try to get services for a kid. I also know the dedication of these social workers and community and service workers in that part of the state government. They really, really work hard. Something went badly wrong. I don't know the details enough to know about this leader, but I'll tell you this: a head on a platter is not system reform, and what we need is system reform here. And I would, as governor, I would work, as I assume this governor will, to really make sure the resources get into that agency that need to be. We have the metrics and can follow things correctly. We have great ideas, finding them anywhere we can about what the best programs are, and we have to not attack these good-hearted, dedicated civil servants that are trying to do this right. And make them feel worse about what they already feel bad about, but give them help, give them learning, give them lessons, give them each other, give them resources. So I think it's a management problem. It's a serious defect. We need to manage our way out of it, not fire our way out of it. That wouldn't make any sense.
Well, of course, lots of times it is about resources, and
Yes.
of course, some of these case managers have incredible caseloads, and they're being asked to, see countless cases and some pretty tough cases. And if we need more resources, are you willing to go to bat? Do we need a different way approaching our taxation system? Do we need more taxes? How would you approach it? That's a tough, ticklish thing.
Well, I met one of the workers in that division the other night, and she was telling me about her growing caseload, near tears. I said, "Why don't you quit?" She said, "Because I care too much." So she deserves support. But I could say the same thing about our correction system, where we need to be putting more into really helping people get back into the mainstream of society. Our education system, where we're letting schools and kids down, and that's not right. I could say the same thing about access to mental health and substance abuse services in our healthcare system, which have been cut back. Yes, we have to invest more. And it's really investment as much as it is expenditure, because to have a kid failing in school and then head for failure in the economy, or a prisoner who isn't getting help, getting rehabilitated, just get re-put back in prison, that costs money. So this, to me, is investment. We do need revenues. They'll come from a better healthcare system. We have literally billions of dollars we could save by redesigning healthcare to really focus on people and take away the complexity of the payment system. We need to close tax loopholes and exemptions. There's billions there. And then the other thing is we need a fair tax system. This state needs a tax system in which people at the low end of the income distribution pay lower rates and people at the high end pay higher rates.
Graduated income tax?
We need to go there. We need to go after the basic idea here that if you're wealthy, I don't begrudge you your wealth. Congratulations if you made it honestly, but now you have a bigger share of the burden of getting this whole place, everybody up. And I would go there. To say we can solve the problems of this Commonwealth without getting resources to do it is just naive.
Well, of course, there's that's always an issue here. And as a matter of fact, the acting superintendent of Boston Public Schools they rolled out or proposed a budget, yet to be approved by the school committee, but involving some serious cutbacks. There's of course the whole issue of violence in the city of Boston and the resources that need to be brought to bear there. It's a tough call, though, to sell that, and it's tough to sell that to the state as a whole. It's one thing for those in the city of Boston. It's another thing.
Leadership is telling the truth, and we have serious problems in this Commonwealth, reflection of problems in the nation as a whole, and we will have to invest in the future of our children and the impoverished people in our population and working class people who need a fair shake. They need to know that they can get jobs, that they can get into the economy, and that just plain takes investment. And those who will say otherwise, I don't know what their plan is. You want to watch it burn? You want to watch the prisons get crowded and build more of them? You want the schools to fail, the kids to fail in school, and then what? Do all the remedial work it takes to keep them out of trouble, or put them in the prisons? I mean, what do you want? And I want a compassionate, effective economy which everybody gets to participate in, and that means we have to be investors. The management side of this is the public has every right to expect that government acts like a good business, that it manages its money well, that it delivers $1's value for $1 of taxes, $2 of value for $1 of taxes, that it treats every citizen like a customer. And that side of the coin, which is leadership for excellence in government, absolutely key to me. That's what I did at CMS, Medicare and Medicaid.
Well, and of course, if you win the Democratic nomination, you're all likelihood to face Charlie Baker, who's got, he's not a doctor, but has much, in some ways, similar experiences, somewhat similar experiences. I won't put him in the same category as you, but a healthcare executive, ran a large state agency, 2 of them, as a matter of fact, and how do you fare in that matchup?
I'd welcome the debate. I mean, you get to choose an insurance executive or a person who's spent 3 or 4 decades now working on making health and healthcare better around the world. You get to choose a guy who's tied to a party that's taken food away from children and cutting unemployment benefits and is willing to stop government just to make a rhetorical point. Have you seen the Republican Party platform in this state? He's got some problems. He already lost this election once. So I welcome that. I think that would be a debate worth having. We'll let the people decide what the values they want are to underpin this Commonwealth.
All right, Donald Berwick, of course, among other things, he's a pediatrician, former executive of a major health management firm, and of course, a former ranking official in the Obama administration. Now a candidate for governor, one of 5 Democrats in the running. As the weeks and months come, you'll hear much more about Donald Berwick, and indeed all the candidates for governor. And I want to thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
When we return with more of Talk to the Neighborhoods, well, we'll shift gears. We'll shift our focus back to Boston City Hall and a profile and courage of sorts, a first-time candidate who was elected as an at-large Boston City Councilor no sooner than took the oath and found herself mired in controversy. We'll talk with Michelle Wu about her experiences as a Boston City Councilor. Joining me, one of my favorite guests. I met her more than a year ago when she first announced for the Boston City Councilor, and wouldn't you know it, she got elected, finishing at or near the top. She no sooner than took the oath of office, so then she found, found out a lot about politics and the Boston City Council. She is, of course, Michelle Wu, and now an at-large Boston City Councilor. And here tonight, nice to have you join us. Thanks so much for coming in. Well, let's start with that because, of course, when you made the announcement, and of course, anybody that follows Boston City Council politics, I'm talking about there's only 13 votes, and it becomes, and everybody wants to be the president, the chair of the board, so to speak. But this became a little more contentious than I think anyone thought. And did you realize that when going in, and I'm not suggesting you're naive in any way, you can't go through a campaign for office without learning that. But were you kind of surprised at the backlash?
No, but you're right that it happened very, very early on in my tenure. And in fact, even before I took the oath of office, right. The news really started to develop in mid-December that I had pledged my support to Councilor Bill Linehan for the council presidency. At that time, there were 3 councilors who were interested in the position, and after some back and forth and a lot of long conversations with my colleagues about the position, what it entailed, and what people wanted to see in a president of the city council, I did pledge my support to Councilor Linehan, my district councilor, and it was, as you say, a big lesson in politics to see the media that resulted. And I have always said that I wanted to be a person who would make decisions diligently and deliberately. And a lot of time went into that decision. And once I made it, and once I gave my word to Councilor Linehan and to others that this was my decision, I had to stick with it, and that I did through many
Well,
media articles.
you get
and-
my profile encouraged for, of course it's not a real award, but just because I talk to so many candidates and politicians, public officials, and well, most of them are forthright. Most of them aren't quite so forthright, and lots of times change their mind, or well, you're not quite sure where they're coming from. So I give you big points for this. But why do you think there was such a backlash about it? Because there's no, when it comes to Boston municipal government, of course, there's no parties per se. It's not like you're a member of one party or the other or anything like that. I know you fancy yourself a progressive Democrat, so it's not really an issue. But were you kind of shocked by the pushback from, I don't know if I call it the progressive community, but certainly some elements of it?
You know, I think it opened up a very important discussion for the city, one on sort of what leadership represents in our city today. And my decision was very much based on the job functions of the council presidency and the ideas that every person had for the role, and the conversations I had with colleagues who were not seeking the presidency as well. And
were there any?
there were, yeah. There were many people who were
teasing,
interested in. You know, it's a term limited position as well, so there are some people who are counted out. But after that, looking at it very practically and from the perspective of what does the council president do, how will the council best function, how can I start to build relationships and really make sure that conversations are continuing between all my colleagues and myself, that was a decision that I had made. And I completely understand. There were many people who were very surprised, many people who were hurt by my decision. And I think what it said to me is that we still have a lot of progress to achieve in our city when it comes to everybody feeling fully welcome and fully inclusive in Boston. That is why I am in politics, to try to make sure that barriers are taken down, whether red tape in government or cultural or societal, making sure that every person feels like they have a shot at the American dream. They have a shot at opportunity for their family and for themselves, and we still have a way to go there. But I do believe that some great work will come out of the council this year, and people will be very pleased at how much we will have been able to accomplish.
How is it shaped? There's a whole host of experiences I'm sure that you're bringing to bear, not the least of which is your family growing up, et cetera, how you approach this. But how has it shaped how you're looking at your tenure now in the council? I mean, has it changed you at all?
The experience leading up to joining? My priorities remain the same. I think what I learned is that it is very important to think and plan for communication. Right? So I think part of it was that I didn't have the chance to really communicate my thoughts to many of my supporters, and many folks learned about it through the media. And things do slip out. Information will get out before you're ready for it, and that was a big lesson.
That's what we do.
Exactly.
I'm only sorry I missed this story, and I'm kidding, of course.
So I do think that I've tried to, in some ways, make up for that by having as many conversations one-on-one as possible, meeting with any group that wants to discuss my decision, and then talking about how I can move forward and how I can support the priorities that residents have moving forward, and working together in that way.
Has that assuaged some of them? I mean, and I don't, I want to talk to you about other things as well, but I really do want to, I was kind of curious about that. I was, a little taken aback by it myself, that it was so kind of, some of the denunciation so vehement almost, I said, are they talking about the same young lady that I talked to that, feels so passionately about various progressive causes?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of emotion wrapped up in politics, and because it's about advocating for issues that are near and dear to the well-being of yourself, your family, things that are absolutely crucial. And so I really do welcome that level of feedback and engagement. I've tried to go to every single meeting where I've been invited to speak about it and really explain and then listen. In many ways, I think it's been helpful to have started conversations with people, and there are folks who reached out very, very upset with my decision. I listened and I did my best to explain, said please contact me for any issue moving forward. I do want to be helpful and will prove to you that I am still the same person that I was. And the good news is that now that that connection has been established, now that communication has been opened, people have come back for a second and third conversation about different issues. So in some way, the silver lining for me is that it has opened up communication with a lot of folks.
Well, once burned, twice learned, and the flip side of that is it make you more reticent to, talk to the media. I hope not to this media person, but to, take a chance. Sometimes, it's hard to know who's going to be the best leader or, those kinds of decisions. Sometimes it's very difficult to decide. Does that change how you act going forward? How you?
I think I will continue to make decisions in the same way, which is to really dig into the facts and the practical implications and what this means for residents, while also thinking very carefully about the symbolism of every action and how that affects people's perception of how welcome they feel in Boston and how included they feel in Boston. In terms of the media, I think,
it's always best to keep them at bay.
I've now been through,
Your
a little
baptism
bit
of fire.
a mini storm, and I think it's just about working hard and communicating as much as possible. So I have learned that there's no downside to speaking the truth and being forthright, and much of the confusion is often in that gray space where some information comes out and you're silent. And I think people want to know that you have, once they hear that you've taken the time to really think it through and hear your criteria for every decision, whether they agree with you or not, at the end of the day, they, I hope, respect the fact that you have taken the time to make a strong decision and to explain that.
And how about amongst your colleagues? Of course, not all of the opponents of Councilor Linehan or the other candidates, I don't know if I'd call them opponents, but the other were candidates of color, but the main one that emerged was Ayanna Pressley as a person of color. Do you think there was some kind of expectation that you necessarily should have voted that way? Did you feel there's, I don't know, a cultural, racial kind of conflict there?
Well, Councilor Pressley and I have known each other for a number of years, and so it was extremely, extremely difficult for me when she announced that she was interested in the position later on. And at that point, I felt that I had made a commitment, had given my word, and needed to honor it.
And not owing to the fact that you're both women of color.
Yeah, as someone who is very conscious of the fact that when I was younger, I didn't see very many women of color in positions of political leadership, much less leadership in general. That is certainly something that I think about in terms of the younger generation and the possibilities they imagine for themselves. So it was a very tough decision. I trust that we will have many opportunities to work together, and the council in the weeks since then has really put together, even in just the 3-4 weeks meetings that we've had since that vote, a very progressive slate of items that we're considering, and I believe that every week new items are added to that, so it'll be a very fruitful term this term.
Regardless, again, Michelle Wu is a first-term at-large city councilor, just inches from the top of the field there, finishing second overall, if I recall correctly, and here tonight on Talk to the Neighborhoods, sharing her experiences, her first weeks, and well, now starting towards months. Okay, now, how is Mayor Walsh doing?
He seems to be doing
Is he
great.
responding to you? Do you have any trouble getting through to him?
I see him everywhere at community events, especially these days in Chinatown, because we're still in the midst of the Lunar New Year celebrations, and so it's been great to run into him often there and in other neighborhoods in the city. I did have the chance to sit down with him as well, and have been very grateful that he's been extremely responsive and supportive of initiatives that the council's been putting forward.
And what about the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade? Will you be marching in it?
I will not. I mean, the situation is still fluid and evolving, and there have been many conversations that have been reported in the media and additional ones behind the scenes. I won't be marching in the parade until it's a fully inclusive parade of every group that wants to march and represent part of the city and the neighborhood. So it remains to be seen what the situation is this year, but I won't be marching until it's fully inclusive.
You could be, though. You get your sneakers ready just in case. I'm just kidding, of course. All right. Now, when you ran for office, I remember you were talking about, and it wasn't on people's radar screen at that time, certainly. All these what some people thought were arcane issues, business permit. And are you making any progress on that? What of business permitting and what? No, I'm teasing a little bit, but is that still amongst your priorities? What are you focused on for your council term here?
Yes, I'm glad that stuck out to you, because I remember all of those meet and greets and events that I did, and when I sometimes would lose track of time when I was talking about permitting, because I'm so interested in addressing the topic, and I would see people's eyes start to glaze over. It's not the most interesting subject for everyone else, apparently, but it is so important. And for every neighborhood, having small businesses that are active, that are welcoming, that hire locally, that keep money in the neighborhood is critical to the neighborhood's well-being and to the sense of community that we feel. So I really believe that as a city can support small business owners, it is supporting the overall economic growth of everyone. The issue is that in a city as historic as Boston, many of our permitting systems, our regulations date back to those early days when Union Oyster House was first opened. And so I've filed my first pieces of legislation or legislative items, and that included a major look at overhauling our legal permitting system. So to try to get rid of some of these licenses if necessary and consolidate others. We still have a license to break and can eggs on the books, and licenses for fortune telling and for serving milk or cream, many things that could be encapsulated in a standard restaurant food permit, and other things that itinerant musicians permits that may be to do for some overhaul or further explanation. This week I'll be filing another half of that hearing order to look at our internal processes and how we look at applications and how we can support business owners once they've entered the process. So hopefully by tackling the legal side as well as the process side, we can really make a difference for small business.
Well, and what else are you focused on for your first term? What will you, at the end of your first term, what will make you consider it a success?
So I'm chairing two committees. The first is a new one on, it's a special committee on small business, entrepreneurship, and innovation. So that will tackle many of those issues. The second committee I'm chairing is the Committee on Arts and Culture. And I really want to look at the intersection of these two areas. So how do we think about the innovation economy, the creative economy, as it relates back to neighborhoods and neighborhood businesses? If we can retain all of the talent that's here in Boston, all the culture, all the diversity, and give it room to grow, showcase it, highlight it, support it through our business structures, through our cultural festivals, then Boston will be a place where anybody that has an idea will have an easier time making it happen, and everybody feels welcome. So I hope at the end of my first term that we have made significant strides in helping businesses open, that many neighborhoods see brighter and more active cultural events, that the new energy around tech and startups and pushing towards a creative and innovation economy has been fully supported. And most of all, that my office has been as responsive as possible and accessible as possible when it comes to constituent services. because at the end of the day, it's still about quality of life and about giving residents a place where they can pick up the phone or find me at a meeting or find my staff at a meeting and say, I'm having this issue, can you help think about how to solve it?
Well, lots of times that goes, as you know, those calls go to district councilors. Are you changing the mold or the model for an at-large city councilor? I'm not suggesting that at-large councilors aren't available, but they're pulled all over the city, and then sometimes it's hard to focus on any particular area.
It's a lot of ground to cover, that's for sure. And our district councilors are doing a great job of really being in the community at events, and their offices cover an incredible amount of ground in the districts. I want to support that work, and there are always residents that may not know who to call or where to turn. I was one of those residents when I was first started raising my sisters and taking care of my mom and opening a business. Whomever can find that person and ask them how to help, whether it's a district councilor, an at-large councilor, someone from the mayor's office. Our job in government, especially in city government, is to be that place where people can turn and where everyone can turn. And I want to help take government out into the community and identify those places where we can really make a difference.
Well, of course, you made some history. You're the first Asian American woman elected citywide, elected to a council position. Has that brought some, I don't know if I'd say additional responsibility, but some expectations, some sense of responsibility on your part that others might not feel? And just wondering how much that plays into it.
It's absolutely been a
I mean, I know you're very
whirlwind.
proud of that, and you should be. But I'm just wondering what that what comes with that.
It's been a whirlwind to be elected and to hit the ground running. There's a lot of need across the city, and I try to take the time to sometimes take a step back and say, how are we doing the constituent services as well as we can do them, attending the community events as many as we can go to, and then thinking about the larger picture as well of setting the stage for the next generation. Right? So this jade necklace is from my grandparents. They gave it to me the day I was born as a tradition in Chinese culture. And I think about the fact that I have been wearing this for years and years. And when I first started wearing it, never thought about politics, never imagined that I would be involved in government at all, much less running for office and going out and doing speeches in front of everyone and shaking hands and meeting people. And I think a large part, as I mentioned before, is about role models and thinking about what was possible. When I was younger, the most visible Asian American woman was Michelle Kwan. And so many folks would say to me, you should become a figure skater when you grow up. And that's the power. It's the power of symbolism and imagination. So I hope that my being out and about in the community is a signal and a symbol to the younger generation that anything is possible if you don't have a background in politics. If you
doesn't mean you can't.
Exactly.
And never get jaded, right? Literally and figuratively. Well, I think you have a great future, and just I've been talking with candidates, politicians for a long time, and so don't stop what you're doing. Just keep moving forward. Sometimes that's tough. It's a tough business, no doubt. Some sharp elbows along the way. You're getting it down. I want to thank you so much for coming in. Of course, it's an interesting way to start, but there might be a purpose behind that. And do you ever think, dare you think even about someday going higher?
It's been a lot to process and digest as it is. And I think what I'm working on now is really figuring out how to be there for every neighborhood. As you said, it's a lot of ground to cover as an at-large councilor, and I really want to do the job in a way that I'm thinking about the whole city and thinking about what policy interests are at stake, but still being there for the neighborhoods too. And it's incredibly rewarding at the end of every day. Today, for example, I visited a school and was at the Mary Lyons School out in Brighton, and just looking in classrooms and speaking to the principal and understanding what is happening in our neighborhoods. We were at a hearing earlier for trash pickup in the downtown neighborhoods and how that affects quality of life. And then ran to a Chinatown banquet before coming here. So there's so much going on all across the city. It's an incredible honor.
You
to be
will
part of
get
it.
some rest someday, but not tonight.
Yeah.
Michelle, thanks for coming in.
Thank you so
Again,
much.
Michelle Wu, at-large Boston City Councilor, and my candidate for Profile and Courage, you take your pick. But nice enough to come by and join us tonight. Unfortunately, we're out of time. You're watching Talking the Neighborhoods. We're here tonight and every Monday night at the same time. Next week, joining us, the new host of the South Boston St. Patrick's Day Breakfast. I'm talking, of course, about State Senator Linda Dorsina Forey. We hope you'll join us for that show. Until then, for Michelle Wu, for Governor's candidate Donald Berwick, my earlier guest, thank you for watching.